Hello humans, it's just Martine and welcome to the start of another weekly reading vlog. It's actually Tuesday morning. I don't have much to update you on yet. Yesterday, Harris was still in town, so it felt like it was still Sunday. Anyway, I'm working on several books right now. I started You Never Forget Your First, which is the Magic Tree House nonfiction pick for this month, and also works for HEARTSTOPPER Readathon prompts, so that's good because a lot of my other current reads right now are not for the HEARTSTOPPER Readathon, which is a questionable decision, but here we are. Yesterday I started a buddy read of Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall, and that's an arc that some of us are reading together, and so I have to read some of that every day to keep up with the buddy read, not on my HEARTSTOPPER Readathon TBR. I'm also trying to blast my way through Babel by R.F. Kuang, because I still have a lot of it left and it's like due at the library in the next few days. Also not on my HEARTSTOPPER Readathon TBR. We'll have to see how things shake out this week, but we're off to an interesting start. It's Wednesday afternoon and I have an update for you because I just finished Babel by R.F. Kuang. I'm giving it 4 stars. For like a fantasy type book, I really liked it. And there were some moments when I really connected with the characters, but there were other moments in which they weren't like as deep as I wanted them to be. I will say though, there were moments that had my jaw absolutely dropping on the floor and I was like, how are they going to deal with this situation? I think the main reason it's getting a 4-star instead of like a 4.5 or 5 is that it did take a while for me to get like interested and integrated into the book. This is probably partially because for a while there I read it right before bed, but I also think the length of the chapters contributed to that. They were just really long chapters, and I also don't think it helps that I read the ebook version and there are footnotes in this, and all the footnotes are in the back of the ebook and you have no way of looking at them while you're reading the ebook. So I didn't get to read the footnotes along with the story, which is obviously a little sad because there are reasons that they were there and I thought they would have added a lot to the story. That was unfortunate, and that's not for any prompts, but it is good because it was due at the library soon, so I finished it up. And that's been most of my reading time for the past 2 to 3 days, although last night I did start the Hating Game, which is for the HEARTSTOPPER Readathon, and I got to page 64. So progress is being made here. Also this morning I got to 25% of You Never Forget Your First. So it's not like I'm making no progress this week. It's just maybe not as much as I would like, both because of the buddy read that I'm doing, which is taking up like 40 minutes of reading every day, and then having to finish Babel so that I could return it to the library. I think tonight I'll hopefully read more of the Hating Game, at least get past page 100, and we'll go from there. It's Thursday night and I had quite the day. It started off really well, and then I drank some juice that it turns out accidentally had way too much caffeine in it. I didn't know there was any caffeine at all. My chronic illness does not like caffeine. I felt terrible for the rest of the day. Got very little done, including reading wise, but then I got to chat with my friends tonight, so I'm happy as I go to bed and feeling a little stronger than earlier, and hopefully tomorrow will be less eventful, but I'll see you then. I don't wanna feel this, 'cause it feels like way too hard. Got me on the ceiling, but the feels ain't worth the fall. Ooh, la la, it's better when I'm numb. I don't wanna feel this. Breaking update. It's Friday afternoon, and a little while ago I finished The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I'm going to give you a review and then return this to the library. This fulfills 3 prompts. I'm using it for Nick's prompt of Bubblegum Milkshake, a book that is someone else's fave, Tao's of a movie poster, a book with an adaptation, and then Tori's prompt of Tumblr blog pubbed in the 2010s. I still do not have a bingo, whatever. And I'm going to end up giving this book 3.5 stars. There were moments when I was like maybe 4 stars, but really thinking about it, no, 3.5 stars for me. There were moments where the pacing and the plotting was just kind of off and a little sporadic to me. There were moments I wasn't sure if I was rooting for this couple. The ending I felt like was kind of abrupt, even though I liked that it avoided a specific trope by doing that, but it was just a little weird. This was a really fun book, but there were also some parts that really made me cringe in the writing. Like in the first page, the main character introduces herself to us. Like she's like, my name is Lucy. And I'm like, no, this is a book, enemies to lovers, romance, contemporary book about these two people who work in a publishing house, and they're both assistants to the co-CEOs. So they're each an assistant to one of the co-CEOs. And there's this big promotion that's suddenly on a line, and they always have played these weird games with each other where they like hate each other and they do things to bug the other person. And all of a sudden we find out that like maybe he doesn't hate her and she's been misinterpreting literally everything he does, which is, I feel like, pretty common in enemies to lovers. There were definitely some fun scenes in this, even if they interrupted the pacing. For instance, I really liked the paintball scene, even though that suddenly felt like it was kind of out of nowhere. Her getting sick happened really suddenly and was weird, but I guess it added to their relationship. I don't know. And the reveal near the end involving his family, I could see from like a million miles away. I was like, why are you drawing this out? I know this is what's happening. And then I also like had a hunch about what the ending was going to be, although it didn't play out in the way I thought it was going to at all. Again, because it had kind of an abrupt ending, and I was imagining more kerfuffle about it, if you will. So 3.5 stars, still a really fun read. I can understand why some people really love this book. Moving on. It's just a little later, and I just finished listening to the audiobook for You Never Forget Your First by Alexis Coe, which means I got my first bingo because I'm using it for Elle's Prompt of Glasses, a book that gives you a new perspective, OLED, microphone, an audiobook. That's the one that gets me my 3 in a row with Charlie, Nick, and OLED, and then Darcy, Trumpet, a book less than 300 pages. What is not exciting is that I did not love this book as much as I wanted to. I'm giving it 2.5 stars. Not a huge fan of biographies, but it was like a female historian writing about the first president. I'll try it. Still not for me. Unfortunate, but glad I read it. Good that I got it done.
Run your fingers through my hair. No, I get a little scared, cause you know you're my type. I used to play it kinda cool. Now I don't know what to do when you with the other guys. Ooh, it's only a matter of time. Ooh, before you and me collide.
Happy Saturday. It's around lunchtime and I just finished reading Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall, which is not for the Heartstopper readathon, but was a buddy read I was doing with some of my friends, and I'm giving it 3 stars, which I actually think is the lowest I've ever rated an Alexis Hall book before, but I also think this is the only fantasy book I've read by Alexis Hall so far. Well, a book that involved fantasy. On my spreadsheet, I marked it as historical romance because that's mainly what it was, but there were fantasy elements. It was really hard to classify on my spreadsheet. I really went back and forth for a while about that, but oh well. It's a classic story of like, I'm cursed and I don't know why, and then I'm falling in love with a person, but make it sapphic, which I loved about it. It's also told from the perspective of like an omniscient narrator who's like a hobgoblin. It's Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream. And I really liked that narration style, so I definitely read more Alexis Hall books written with this narrator, because the narrator was like, I have more stories to tell, you know, maybe I'll tell them in the future. And I'm like, I will read them. I'll also just read like anything Alexis Hall writes because I know it will be queer and fabulous in some way. The pacing was a bit weird. I didn't care much for many of the characters. I liked the main character's best friend and I liked the narrator. And other than that, I just didn't really care. And I'm not sure I was rooting for the actual relationship in it, but overall I still had a fun time. And that was an arc. That book comes out in like July. It was actually my first book on my spreadsheet for this month that is not a library book. So it's been an interesting reading month so far.
I don't wanna feel things, cause I feel things way too hard.
I've been making progress on The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I had to keep myself from screaming in the middle of the dining hall. I'm really liking it. The only thing that I don't like it, like, it's cheesy at points, but that's totally fine. But the only thing I really don't like about it is that the author says that the main male character, that his eyes are black. They're not. They're not. And it's distracting, and she keeps mentioning it. But other than that, I'm living. I'm alive. I'm alive. I can't even talk right now. I'm 75% of the way into the cheat sheet. Losing my mind over it. Absolutely feral. Wish I didn't have to stop reading it right now. But I'm so excited for what I'm going to be doing instead that it's almost worth it. And that's because I'm going to be reading This Winter by Alice Oseman. You might be wondering, why do you have to stop what you're already reading to read this? It's because Bailey's going to read it with me on live. Hooray! We read Nick and Charlie on live a couple months ago. So now that it's the Heartstopper Readathon, she was like, I think I'm ready for our buddy read of This Winter. So I'm super excited. Alice Oseman is commonly one of those authors that Bailey and I read together. So there's double good associations with reading Alice Oseman because I love books by Alice Oseman and I also love having something to talk about with Bailey. I mean, we could talk about anything, but having a specific book to talk about is extra super fun and special. I'm excited about this, so I'm going to log on in the next few minutes and we'll chat it up before the live stream. I'm so excited to see her. And yeah, I'm excited for this book. I know that it packs some punches. I've been warned by TikTok on many an occasion that this book is very sad. I love the characters, so we'll make it out alive. And then after that today, I'm hoping to finish the cheat sheet. No, I will finish the cheat sheet because I have less than an hour left of it and it's only mid-afternoon. So before I fall asleep tonight, I can definitely finish it, which will be great because that will cover 3 prompts for the Heartstopper Readathon. Making good progress. Okay, I'm gonna go. All right, hello. It's now like an hour and a half later and I just finished talking to Bailey, which means I finished This Winter by Alice Oseman, which is my last Alice Oseman book to be caught up on all Alice Oseman books. Sadness. That being said, even though this had some very sad themes, it made me so happy because I love these characters with my whole heart. It did take me like around half of the amount of time that it took me to read Nick and Charlie. Like, this is a very short novella. It's technically like 102 pages, but then it starts on page 11, so it's more like 90 pages, and the pages have like huge text and like pictures everywhere, which is totally fine. There wasn't much plot to this, but the characters, the writing, and all that stuff make it incredibly worth it. Basically, we're following this spring family on Christmas Day, and we get Tori's perspective and then Charlie's and then Oliver's, so from eldest to youngest spring sibling. I love all of them, but the Oliver chapter at the end made me very, very happy because this is the first time we've like really heard from Oliver and Oliver's perspective, and it was adorable. So I'm going to give this 4.5 stars. I waffled with this for a bit because I was like, you know, not much really happened, so I was like 4. Then I entered it in my spreadsheet and it suggested that I should give it higher than that. So 4.5 it is, because at first I was going to give it a 5 once I switched from 4, but then I was like, no, 4.5 it is. And thanks to Bailey for reading that with me and everybody who attended the live. Doesn't fulfill any of my prompts. Well, I probably could make it, but I didn't fit it into my original TBR because this was kind of like a last minute read with Bailey. I would say that I'm ending off this vlog, but I only have like an hour left of the cheat sheet. So I'd love to finish that tonight and share my thoughts with you. So I guess let's get to it. 5 stars. I'm giving the cheat sheet 5 stars. Where to start with this? So I already assumed that I would probably like this book because it's 2 tropes that I like. It's friends to lovers, which is my favorite romance trope, and then fake dating, which I think is my second favorite. It's a sports romance, which I'm not sure that I've ever read before. So that was the part that was kind of like, I don't know if I'll like this, but they really didn't talk about sports much. They talked about their careers in sports, which was pretty interesting, but they didn't make me sit there and like look at sports terminology. I will say the funny thing about it being a sports romance is that I'm reading it today and it happens to be Super Bowl Sunday, and I read a chapter and the chapter started with, "It's Super Bowl Sunday." And I was like, are you listening? So that was a little weird, but also fun. Like, the atmosphere was right for it. I do think, though, that this did something in Friends to Lovers that I really especially like, which is where both of them have loved each other for a very long time, but have been afraid to ruin their friendship by divulging those feelings for each other, compared to the like, suddenly I have feelings for my best friend. I much prefer when it's like they've loved each other forever and it's just, ugh. And these characters have been best friends for like 6 years, so there's a lot of history there. They've always been very respectful of each other. I feel like they communicate well, aside from keeping their feelings for one another secret. They made me happy. They were both such wonderful characters to read from. Like, I liked both characters immensely, which was awesome because it was dual perspective, so we saw inside both of their minds. These were two characters where I was glad that happened. Like, I really enjoyed hearing from both of them. I found them to be fascinating characters and like really sweet and just great people and great together. It was also a closed door romance, which I was like, yay for me. So that was great, and yet there was still plenty of tension. The author did a really great job of having tension, and I felt like they didn't get together too soon in it, and like I was rooting for them, but I was also losing my mind. So I read most of this today, especially because, as I explained to Bailey when I was talking to her earlier, I started this book right before bed one night and I read one chapter and I was like, I need to switch to a different ebook because if I keep reading this book, I will never stop. Even though it was a little cheesy from the very beginning, like how she talks about him specifically and his body, I was like, that's really cheesy and like, meh. But I was still like, I can tell that there's a chemistry between these two characters and that I'm really going to love this book, and I absolutely did. There are also so many things that I liked about it that I can't really tell you because they're major spoilers. There was some focus on mental health here, which was cool and unexpected. Well, a lot I can't say, but I just know that I really loved this book. It made me super happy. Well, by the end, it made me super happy. I was happy reading it, but also like, So yeah, and I'm using this for 3 prompts for the Heartstopper readathon. Nick, rugby ball, a book featuring sports. Darcy's of tie-dye hoodie, 3+ colors on the cover, and Darcy's Monster Munch prompt, a book featuring friendship, because friends to lovers. That also reminds me that one of the things that I loved about this book was that it kind of reminded me in some spots of the vibes of the Bromance Book Club, because Nathan is really close with the people on his football team, and they have this brainstorming session near the beginning where they come up with this cheat sheet to try and get Bree to fall in love with Nathan. And the way that they talked to each other and that scene went about, it felt like a scene from the Bromance Book Club, with the same type of banter and trust in the group of male friends, and just really, it was just so funny. And there was one moment that involved the cheat sheet and one of the other characters that made me snort laugh. It was so cheesy, but it was so funny. There were actually a couple of those now that I think about it. So point being, I really liked like everything this book had to say. Not the jet black eyes, but everything else that the book had to say. And I'm really glad I read it. And on that note, I'm going to end this vlog here. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below what is one of your favorite tropes, and subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!